What's up guys, this is Voxsite and welcome to another After Effects tutorial. In this tutorial we're gonna be creating a butterfly rig. Then we're gonna use that rig to have our butterfly fly around a logo, and also just as finishing touches add a layer of particles, and this is using particular, so you will need to have particular installed in order to create these trails. But if you don't want to use any trails, you can still follow the tutorial, and you won't be needing any plugins to set up this butterfly and for the rest of the animation. So let's get started right away. Let's create a new project and let's create a new comp. Or actually, I will import my butterfly texture first, so I will double click. And now if I drop my butterfly texture into a new composition, here you can see this is the butterfly image that I'm using, and this is just an image I grabbed on Google. If you search for butterfly and also add to the search PNG, it will give you a lot of different images with butterflies that also have transparency. So it's important that your image has transparency. It doesn't necessarily need transparency. You can still grab your pen tool and then just create your cutout mask, but it's a lot easier to just grab an image that has transparency. So this will be the image that I'm gonna be using, but you can use any image with any butterfly that you want. So let's go ahead and go to the composition settings here, and for my rig I want to use width and height of 1500, and duration should be let's increase this to 600. So I know my animation composition will be around 300 frames, which is roughly 10 seconds. So I'm giving the rig composition a duration of 600 frames, just so the composition will be long enough to offset it or play around with it. Alright, and let's hit OK, and let's scale this butterfly down. Alright, and I will name this composition. Let's go to settings here, and I will just change the name here to rig. Alright, and let's go ahead and grab this layer and pre-compose this butterfly layer. So Ctrl-Shift-C, and let's just name this butterfly pre-compt. So it's very important that the layer you're using for your rig is exactly the same height and width as your composition, and just pre-composing your layer will solve this problem. And also I will be using my utility box script. So this is a free script available on my website, and I will place the link to download the script in the description of the video, so you can follow that link. And on the page you will find all the necessary information on how to install this script, so it's very easy to install and use. And once you install it, you can just run it from your window, and you can see here that it's already running utility box version 1.6, and I just have it docked over here to the right. Alright, and with utility box I will grab this layer, and let's go to my grid tab, and for my grid I want to split this layer into, let's say, 15 columns. So the first value here will be 15, and then it also needs a value over here, so I don't want any rows, and I'm just going to use a value of 1. So this will just split this layer into 15 horizontal pieces, which you'll see in a second. So select your layer and hit split over here, and I can go ahead and close this. And now you can see I have 15 individual layers that I can then use. I'm gonna go ahead and grab this middle portion over here, so this will be our 8th layer, and I will just rename this, well, let's go back, and I just want to rename this layer to body. So now I have 7 pieces over to the left that will be our left wing, and then we have 7 guys over to the right, which will be our right wing. And this layer over here is just our original layer, and I can go ahead and just delete this guy. So let's actually just color code this layer. So I'm just grabbing the first 7 layers, and I'm gonna make this cyan. And for my rest of the layers, so for my right wing, I'm just gonna make this orange, just so it's easier to work with. Alright, so now I want to add a new adjustment layer, and this will be our controls. Alright, and let's go ahead, and for this guy I want to add an expression and a slider controller. And this slider, this first slider control I will rename to bend, and I will duplicate this, and this second one I will rename to flap. Alright, so let's take care of our bend controller. So what I want to do is grab the Y rotation for all of these layers. So let's just grab a layer here, and let's press R for rotation. And I want to be able, and I want to link the Y rotation value to a slider So when I change the slider value, all of these layers change their rotation. All right. So let's go ahead and go to our first layer, press R for rotation, and let's drop down our effects here. And I only need the bend for now. And let's go ahead and I'll click our Y rotation to add an expression, and I will just pick whip our slider value. And now as I increase the slider value, I can also affect the Y rotation. I also want these layers, so all of these layers, and I want them to rotate not from the center of the layer, rather from the edge of the layer, so this edge here. And I'm gonna go ahead and let's grab all of our left wing layers, and I will press A for my anchor point, and I'm just gonna move this over on the x-axis until it aligns with our edge. So this will give me a perfect value of 100, 200, 300 and so on. And now I will just have to reposition these layers because they offset in the opposite direction, and I will just move them back into place here. Alright, so the anchor point values stay the same, and I'm just offsetting their position. Alright, and now as I rotate my layer again, you can see that it's rotating from the edge instead of from the center of the layer. Alright, let's set this back to 0. And let's copy this Y rotation value. So I'm just grabbing this property, hit Ctrl C to copy, grab all of these other layers and press Ctrl V. And now as I go to my controls and increase the bend, you can see that they're all rotating at the same time using just this one value. Alright, let's set this back to 0. And what I want to do now is link all of these pieces together, and I want to create sort of like a chain of hierarchy. And let's grab this outer segment part, so this guy over here, and I want to link this layer to the layer next to it. So in this case, it's going to be this guy. So I want to link this first layer to this layer, and then this layer to this other layer, and let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to grab the last segment for this left wing, and I'm just going to parent it to the layer below it, and then grab this other layer and parent it to the layer below it, and just continue this until we reach our last layer, which will be our 8th layer for this left wing. So now I'm creating a hierarchical order, and now as I go to my controls and increase the bend, you can see that it's creating this nice sort of like a page flip effect. And let's just do the same for our right wing as well. So let's grab all of these layers first, and let's press A for our anchor point, and let's change the anchor point so it's right on the edge. Alright, so I'm just making sure that these values look alright. And now I'm just gonna move them back into place. And let's go to any layer and go to Y rotation, and let's go to controls as well and prepare our bend value. And I will just link the Y rotation as well to the slider value. The only problem here is that we need this to rotate in the other direction, so we can just multiply this value by a -1 value, and this will just rotate in the opposite direction and create a symmetrical animation. Alright, so now I can grab this Y rotation, select all of my other layers, and press Ctrl V to paste the expression. And let's go to our controls and see if this works. Alright, so getting the right effect, and let's set this to 0, and let's create our chain. So I'm gonna look for my most outer segment, which is this guy over here, and I'm just gonna link it to its predecessor until we reach our last segment. Alright, then let's see how the bend looks now. So pretty cool, and this will help add a lot of elasticity and just create a more organic and natural animation to our butterfly flap. And let's take care of the actual flap right now. And what I want to do with this is let's grab this 8th layer here, which is the first layer in our chain. Let's go to our rotation, and let's go to the expression here, and let's prepare our flap value. And I'm just gonna go ahead, and for this expression I'm just gonna backspace to erase this expression and pick whip our flap value. Alright, and then I can simply copy this value to the other head of the chain, which is this layer. So this is where the chain starts for our right wing. Go to rotation and let's paste this expression. Control V to paste. And also I want the rotation for this layer to be the other way around, so I'm just going to multiply this value by a -1. And let's take a look and see what we got. So if I go to my controls now and increase the flap, I'm just creating a regular flap. And as I increase my bend, I can also give this a nice organic touch to it. Alright, and let's actually just go and set up our animation. And actually, let's grab a camera fast and just turn this around and see how this will actually look in 3D. So you can see that the bend really helps sell the effect of the flap a lot more and just create a much nicer animation this way. And let's see how we can animate this. Let's go ahead and at frame 0 I'm gonna set a keyframe for our flap at around maybe somewhere around this position. Set a keyframe and let's press U to show our keyframes. Let's move over maybe 5 frames and let's set this flap to be on the other side now, so maybe somewhere around this position. And I can simply repeat these keyframes by adding an expression, and the expression will be loop out, and that's with a capital O. Let's open and close parentheses, and in between parentheses I will type quote, ping, pong, and end quote. And this expression will cycle through our keyframes and just repeat them throughout the whole composition. Alright, and let's also go to our bend and let's set up some bend deformation. So let's increase the bend value maybe to 8. Let's add a keyframe and let's press U. Let's go to frame 5 and let's set the bend on the other direction. Alright, and I will also just copy this expression and just paste it for these other keyframes. And also I want to smooth these keyframes out, so select all of them and press F9. And now as I make a quick RAM preview, you can see now that this is the animation. And this will be fine for now. We can always just go back and readjust these keyframes, and if I want a slower animation, I'm just gonna grab these keyframes and move them out. And here you can see now the effect. I can also go ahead an extra step and let's press F4 and let's grab all of these layers and let's enable motion blur for them and enable motion blur for the composition. And this also adds a nice motion blur to this. The only problem with this is that if I select a frame here, you can see that the motion blur effect is kind of separating our layers, and I'm just gonna turn this off for now. Maybe if you have something like, let's add another layer, and if I go ahead and add so if you have RSMB plugin, this will now take care of that problem, and you can see it's creating a much nicer effect. But you don't necessarily have to use motion blur. This is just an extra step that you can add to your final render. Alright, so that's a bit nicer, but like I said, this isn't really necessary unless you want to and have access to RSMB plugin. Let's delete this adjustment layer and let's go to our controls and press U for my keyframes and maybe just set this back to 5. Alright, so I will get rid of the camera and this will be our butterfly rig. And now we can go ahead and create our main composition. So let's create a new composition here. Let's make this full HD, so 1920 by 1080. I will make this maybe 250 frames long and a frame rate of 30 should be fine. Let's name this to main comp and hit OK. And I can go ahead now and just drop my rig composition inside this main comp. And all I have to do now is just set this to be a 3D layer and also rasterize our layers. And now you can see that as I turn this around, we're just having this nice butterfly, this nice 3D butterfly layer, which you can then use to animate it however you want. And I can go ahead and just scale this down a bit. Alright, and let's go ahead and add our logo. And I will now drop this logo inside the main comp. Let's pre-compose this logo, so Ctrl-Shift-C, and let's name this to logo holder. And also make this a 3D layer. Let's go ahead and also drop a background, and I will rename this layer to background. Let's just use a simple ramp for this, so generate ramp. And for my first color, or rather end color, I'm just gonna set this to a nice blue. And maybe set this as a radial ramp. And let's actually just switch these points around, and let's set this start color to a blue and my end color to a dark. Alright, and this should be fine. And let's go ahead and add a camera now. And 75 degrees angle view should be fine. Hit OK, and let's go ahead and add a null object. This will be my cam target. Let's make this a 3D layer, and I will parent the camera to our cam target. So this cam target null object will make it a lot easier to animate our camera. And let's set up our camera animation. So let's go to the position for this cam target, and I will press P for position and right click to separate dimensions. And let's set this, and let's decrease the white position, or rather increase, until our logo is a bit off the screen. So maybe our camera will start in this position and make a keyframe for the white position there. And let's go maybe to 150, and let's center our logo on the screen. I will also maybe make a keyframe for my Z position and just push this out a bit and go to the beginning of my timeline, and then just zoom this in a bit. So this will be our camera animation. And also just grab these keyframes and feather these out, or actually just move these out by pressing F9. And this will be alright. Let's actually grab this rig and let's scale this down maybe a bit more. Let's add another null object, and this will be my, let's name this to butterfly helper and make this a 3D layer. Let's set this butterfly helper above our grid, and I will parent this grid to this butterfly helper. And for the position for this guy, I also want to separate dimensions, and also grab this rig and hit P for position and then just separate dimensions. Let's go inside our costume view and see exactly what we're doing here. So let's maybe adjust this rig layer a bit. Let's rotate this on the x-axis and also on the y-axis. Alright, and if I go to my position settings and let's maybe increase the Z position. So I'm just creating this separation from the center of our screen. And as I go to my butterfly helper and press R for rotation, if I increase the Y rotation, you can see that this is creating the orbiting animation. And I can see here that my butterfly layer is not aligned properly. And maybe let's grab this layer and let's just rotate this guy until it's properly aligned here. Maybe go to the rotation settings and let's set this to 270, 0 and 0. And let's actually set the butterfly helper Y rotation to 0 as well. And I can see here that I want this rig layer to be flipped on the Z axis 90 degrees. And now as I increase the Y rotation, we're having our proper orbiting. Alright, and I can set a simple expression for my orbiting animation. So this will be time multiplied by, let's say, 120. This will just automate the Y rotation value and just create this nice orbiting animation. Let's maybe decrease the position on the Z-axis here, so bring it closer to our logo. Let's go in our active camera view and see what we have. Right, so maybe decrease the scale even more for this rig. And this will be fine for now. And let's grab our butterfly helper, press P for position, and let's drag this down. Actually adjust the Y position, not the Z one. So I'm dragging this layer down until it's off the screen. I will set a keyframe for the Y position, and then I will just drag this layer up until it's off the screen on the top here. Alright, now we have